Peter Lawford was a man who had it all, fame and fortune and love, and then let it drift away.
In 2018, Peter Lawford's daughter Victoria finally broke her silence. The truth about the Rat Pack was darker than anyone imagined. Drug overdoses covered up by the mob, exploitation of young actresses, and secrets so dangerous they drove her father to addiction. "I've become a drug dealer to the stars," Lawford wrote in his private diary. Today, we're revealing what really went on behind the Rat Pack's perfect image, and why these secrets haunted Lawford until his death. Peter Lawford was born on September 7, 1923, in London, England. His life started with drama that would follow him forever. His father, Sir Sidney Lawford, was a decorated war hero, but his mother, May Bunny, was married to another man when Peter was born. This caused a lot of gossip and forced the family to leave England and move to America. Peter spent his childhood surrounded by luxury, especially during the time his family lived in Paris. Instead of sending him to regular schools, his mother decided he was born to be an artist. She cut out subjects like math and Latin from his studies and replaced them with acting lessons, believing this was his true calling. When Peter was 14, his family moved to Hollywood. Not long after, a terrible accident changed his life. One day, he ran through a glass door and badly injured his right arm. The damage was permanent, and he could never fully use his hand again. This might have seemed like a disaster, but it turned out to be a blessing. When World War II started, Peter's injury kept him out of the army. This upset his family, who wanted him to follow in his father's military footsteps, but it allowed him to focus on acting. With many actors leaving for war, there were chances for new faces like Peter to shine. But Hollywood didn't welcome him with open arms right away. In 1939, when his family got stuck in Florida without access to their money in England, Peter worked as a parking attendant to save enough for the trip to California. Once they arrived in Hollywood, he took on small roles, often without any credit, in films like Mrs. Miniver and The White Cliffs of Dover. These roles didn't make him famous, but they helped him learn the ropes of the film industry and kept him working. When Peter Lawford was 19, he signed a contract with MGM, one of the biggest studios in Hollywood. He was young, handsome, and had a polished British accent. The studio saw him as someone who could become a star. But things didn't start smoothly. His mother, Lady May Lawford, caused trouble by asking the head of MGM, Louis B. Mayer, to pay her a salary as Peter's personal assistant. When Mayer said no, she made a shocking claim that Peter was gay and needed to be supervised. This created a scandal that could have ruined his career before it even started. It also hurt his relationship with his mother deeply. Despite this rough start, Peter got his first role in the movie A Yank at Eton in 1942, where he acted with Mickey Rooney. The film did well, and Peter's performance was appreciated. In 1945, he was cast in the picture of Dorian Gray, playing a key role that showed he could handle serious acting. The movie was a hit, and suddenly, Peter was no longer just a background actor. That same year, he starred in Son of Lassie, which made him even more popular. Audiences loved his charm and style, and he began to build a reputation as a sophisticated leading man. By the late 1940s, Peter was one of MGM's rising stars. In 1946, he proved his talent again in the comedy Clooney Brown. In 1948, everything changed for Peter with the musical Easter Parade. He acted alongside Judy Garland and Fred Astaire, two of Hollywood's biggest stars. Peter's role as Jonathan Harrow III was light-hearted and fun, showing his talent for comedy and charm. The movie was a massive hit, making over $6.8 million at the box office. huge for those days. One of the most memorable moments in the film was his duet with Judy Garland, "A Couple of Swells." Audiences loved it, and the song became a classic. The film even won an Oscar for its music. This success made Peter a well-known star, and Easter Parade became a movie people watched again and again, especially during Easter. Peter's success continued the next year with Little Women in 1949. He played Laurie, the charming boy next door who falls in love with Joe March, played by June Allison. The movie was another hit, and critics praised Peter for his performance. He brought a mix of warmth and depth to the role, showing he could handle serious parts just as well as fun ones. Between 1947 and 1953, Peter Lawford became a well-known actor in Hollywood. He starred in popular movies, where he acted alongside big names like Fred Astaire and Jane Powell. But his rise wasn't easy. Moving into leading roles brought a lot of pressure. People compared him to famous actors like Clark Gable and Cary Grant, and he had to prove he could succeed. Lawford worked hard and found his own style, playing polished, elegant roles that fit his British background. By the early 1950s, he was one of MGM's top actors, earning $5,000 a week, a huge amount at the time. In 1954, Lawford's life changed completely when he married Patricia Kennedy. The wedding, on April 24th in New York City, was a big event. Patricia was part of the powerful Kennedy family, and her brother, John F. Kennedy, was already rising in politics. The marriage connected Hollywood glamour with political power, drawing huge public interest. Peter and Patricia's relationship started quickly. They met in 1949 through John F. Kennedy, and by early 1954, they were engaged. Patricia's father, Joseph Kennedy Sr., wasn't sure about Lawford at first. He worried about Peter's reputation as a Hollywood playboy. But despite his concerns, the couple went ahead with their plans. After the wedding, they moved to Santa Monica, California, where they became known for hosting star-studded parties. Guests included Marilyn Monroe and Frank Sinatra. Being part of the Kennedy family brought new opportunities, but also new challenges. Lawford's life became a mix of acting and politics. He often appeared in the public eye, not just as an actor, but as part of the famous Kennedy Circle. The couple had 4 children: Christopher, Sidney, Victoria, and Robin. Apart from Kennedy's connection, Peter was also known for Rat Pack. In May 1955, a group of Hollywood stars gathered at Lauren Bacall's home after a wild night in Las Vegas. Humphrey Bogart led the pack, and with him were Frank Sinatra, Judy Garland, David Niven, and Angie Dickinson. They looked completely worn out, and when Bacall saw them, she joked, "You look like a goddamn Rat Pack." The name stuck, and the original Rat Pack was born. This group wasn't about flashy performances or big shows. They were just friends having fun, throwing wild parties, and living life on their own terms. Bogart was their leader, called the Pack Master, and Bacall was their den mother. They even made up silly rules like never rat on a rat. The group became famous for their antics. One time, they convinced a pilot to change course and fly to Las Vegas instead of London. They partied at the Sands Hotel for 3 days straight, and instead of getting in trouble, they became even more popular. But this original Rat Pack didn't last long. In 1957, Bogart passed away, and the group faded away with him. Still, the idea of the Rat Pack had been born, and it wasn't going anywhere. After Bogart's death, Frank Sinatra decided to build his own version of the Rat Pack. By 1958, while working on a movie with Dean Martin and Shirley MacLaine, he started putting his group together. Sinatra had a big vision. He wanted a team of entertainers who could rule Las Vegas and Hollywood. He didn't just want friends to party with, he wanted people who could sing, act, laugh, and, of course, have a good time. Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr. were the first to join, and they hit it off right away. The group's first big moment happened in January 1959 at the Sands Hotel. All three were booked for separate shows, but they started jumping on stage together, making jokes, and singing as a group. The crowd loved it, and a new era of the Rat Pack began. At first, Sinatra called his group the Clan, but in 1960, a journalist pointed out that the name might offend people, so Sinatra quickly switched back to the Rat Pack, even though he didn't love the name. By then, the group was becoming a huge hit, with their mix of music, comedy, and charm. Peter Lawford joined the Rat Pack because of his unique connection to politics. He had married Patricia Kennedy, John F. Kennedy's sister, in 1954. This made Lawford a link between Hollywood and the Kennedy family, and Sinatra saw this as a chance to get closer to power. Lawford officially joined the Rat Pack in 1960, but it wasn't an easy start. Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr. weren't sure about him at first, thinking he hadn't earned his spot. Over time, Lawford won them over with his charm and willingness to play along with the group's wild antics. But Lawford's place in the group was never solid. Sinatra gave him the nickname Brother in Lawford, a constant reminder that he was there because of his marriage. In 1960, the Rat Pack took over the Sands Hotel and Casino, where Peter, along with Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., and Joey Bishop, delivered performances that people still talk about today. These shows weren't just concerts. They were late-night parties filled with music, comedy, and surprises. Crowds loved it, and tickets sold for as much as $100, which was a fortune back then. For 28 nights straight, they performed for packed rooms, drawing celebrities, politicians, and wealthy fans from all over the country. While all this was happening, Peter's acting career was also going strong. He starred in movies like Exodus and The Longest Day, but his real claim to fame came from the Rat Pack's films. Their first big hit was Ocean's 11 in 1960, where Peter played Jimmy Foster, a smooth-talking playboy helping Sinatra's Danny Ocean rob 5 Las Vegas casinos in one night. The movie wasn't just entertaining, it was a huge success, making over $5 million at the box office. What many people don't know is that Peter was the reason Ocean's 11 even happened. He had bought the rights to the story and originally wanted someone else to star in it. But when Sinatra showed interest, Peter gave him the lead role, which helped secure his place in the group. After Ocean's 11, the Rat Pack made more films together, like Sergeant's 3 in 1962 and 4 for Texas in 1963. These movies weren't as big as Ocean's 11, but they kept the group's fun and charm alive. Peter's role in the group was always unique. He brought a touch of class with his British accent, sharp suits, and aristocratic manners. He wasn't just playing a role, he grew up in privilege as the son of a British Army officer, so this sophistication came naturally to him. On stage, he used his English charm to create funny moments, like the time he tried teaching Sinatra and Martin how to play cricket. The audience loved it, and Peter's ability to laugh at himself made him even more likable. But being the sophisticated Englishman sometimes held him back. People forgot he was a talented actor who could do more than just play the polished gentleman. He once said, "I'm more than just a well-dressed Englishman, but people don't seem to see that." Behind the scenes, life in the Rat Pack wasn't as glamorous as it seemed. Sinatra was the leader, and his strong personality often caused tension. Peter also struggled with alcohol and drugs, which sometimes affected his work. During Sergeant's 3, Sinatra even threatened to replace him because of his drinking. Sammy Davis Jr., always the peacemaker, stepped in to help Peter stay on track. Still, Peter Lawford lived an exciting but complicated life, stuck between two powerful worlds, Hollywood's glitz and the Kennedy family's political power. He helped organize big events for the Kennedys, like a famous fundraiser in July 1960 at the Beverly Hilton. The night was filled with performances by stars like Frank Sinatra and Judy Garland, all to help Kennedy's presidential campaign. It wasn't just about raising money. It was about showing that Hollywood believed in Kennedy. Lawford's home in Santa Monica, a glamorous beach house, became a hotspot where stars and politicians met. In February 1960, this house was where Marilyn Monroe first met JFK, a meeting that would lead to endless rumors and scandals. Lawford also brought JFK into the world of the Rat Pack, a group of famous entertainers led by Frank Sinatra. Through Lawford, they became big supporters of Kennedy during his 1960 campaign. Sinatra even sang a special version of High Hopes, just for Kennedy. It was fun, glamorous, and gave Kennedy a cool image. In March 1962, Peter Lawford's life took a dramatic turn because of one phone call. President John F. Kennedy was supposed to visit Palm Springs, and Frank Sinatra was thrilled to host him. Sinatra spared no expense, spending a huge amount of money to renovate his home. He added a helipad and even built a special wing to accommodate JFK and his team. Sinatra saw this as his chance to get closer to the Kennedys and solidify his influence. But things didn't go as planned. Just a few days before the visit, JFK's brother, Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, stepped in. He didn't like Sinatra's connections to mob figures like Sam Giancana and decided it wasn't a good idea for JFK to stay there. Instead, JFK stayed at Bing Crosby's house, who happened to be a Republican. Peter Lawford was caught in the middle. As Sinatra's friend and JFK's brother-in-law, he had to be the one to break the bad news. On March 24, 1962, Lawford called Sinatra to explain the change. He tried to soften the blow, saying it was a security issue and not personal. But Sinatra didn't care. He exploded in anger, calling Lawford names and accusing him of betrayal. The call ended quickly, but the damage was done. Sinatra's rage didn't stop there. In a fit of anger, he destroyed the helipad he had built for JFK, smashing it with a sledgehammer. He tore down photos of the president and ripped apart anything that reminded him of the visit. Then, just 2 days later, Sinatra officially kicked Lawford out of the Rat Pack. He told the other members, like Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr., to cut ties with Lawford too. This wasn't just a personal loss for Lawford, it ruined his career. Sinatra had a lot of power in Hollywood and made sure Lawford was blacklisted. Lawford went from starring in big movies to struggling to find work. When the Rat Pack made a film called Robin and the Seven Hoods, Lawford was supposed to have a major role, but Sinatra replaced him with Bing Crosby, adding insult to injury. The fallout didn't stop with his career. Lawford's marriage to Patricia Kennedy was already shaky because of his drinking and affairs. In February 1966, she filed for legal separation, accusing him of cruelty, and asked for custody of their 4 children. The divorce battle went on for months and got ugly, but by September, Lawford agreed to a settlement. The outcome was rough for Lawford. He lost custody of his kids and had to pay $20,000 a year in child support, which was a huge amount back then. He also had to keep a $100,000 life insurance policy for the children. To cover these costs and his legal bills, he sold their fancy Santa Monica beach house. The divorce didn't just drain his finances, it ruined his social life too. Patricia's family cut ties with him, and he lost the powerful Kennedy connections that had helped his career. After the divorce, Lawford's drinking and drug use spiraled out of control. By the late 1960s, he was drinking vodka every day, starting as early as 6 in the morning. He also started using drugs like dexedrine and Seconal, and by the 1970s, he was hooked on cocaine, spending thousands of dollars on it every week. His health began to fail, and in 1971, he collapsed from a cocaine overdose at a hotel. Doctors warned him that he could die if he didn't stop, but he couldn't kick his addictions. He tried rehab many times, including a stay at the famous Betty Ford Center in 1983, but he kept relapsing. His behavior became so erratic that he started losing acting jobs. In one embarrassing moment in 1977, he showed up drunk to film an episode of Fantasy Island, and the director had to replace him. By the 1980s, years of alcohol and drug abuse had left Lawford's health in ruins. He developed liver disease and showed signs of brain damage. At 60, he looked much older, his face and body showing the toll of his hard-living lifestyle. His career was also in ruins. After the divorce, Lawford found it harder and harder to get work. He only appeared in 3 films during the 1970s, and none of them were successful. By the mid-1970s, his money was nearly gone. He had to sell his luxury car and even his prized collection of antique guns just to pay off his debts. The IRS came after him for unpaid taxes, and he took whatever jobs he could get, including low-budget movies and even infomercials. In a desperate move, he sold personal letters from Marilyn Monroe to a tabloid for cash. He also gave interviews about the Kennedys, sometimes exaggerating the stories to make them more dramatic and earn more money. Despite everything, Lawford kept trying to make a comeback. In 1978, he had a small role in Hawaii Five-0, playing a charming con man. Audiences liked him, but it didn't lead to more opportunities. His best attempt at a return came in 1981 when he played a boxing promoter in a TV movie called Body and Soul. Critics liked his performance, but the movie didn't revive his career. Most of his later roles were guest spots on TV shows, where he often played versions of his old glamorous self. He even returned to Fantasy Island in 1980, managing to redeem himself after his earlier disaster on the show. His last role was in a small, low-budget film called Where is Parsifal, which was finished in 1983 but released after his death. The movie was a flop, and it marked the sad end of a once promising career. On December 24, 1984, at the age of 61, Peter Lawford died of cardiac arrest, complicated by kidney and liver failure at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. His death marked the end of a tumultuous life that had seen the heights of Hollywood glamour and the depths of addiction and despair. In a final indignity, Lawford's family could not afford the $10,000 needed to keep his remains at Westwood Village Memorial Park Cemetery. His fourth wife, Patricia Lawford, eventually scattered his ashes in the Pacific Ocean, a place he had loved throughout his life. Peter Lawford was a man everyone trusted with their secrets. In Hollywood, this reputation earned him the nickname The Vault. He became known as the guy who could keep secrets no matter what. This trust started in 1947 when he became close friends with Frank Sinatra. For over 20 years, Lawford saw everything about Sinatra, his bad temper, mob ties, and love affairs, but never shared a word with anyone. That loyalty made him a favorite among Hollywood stars. By the 1950s, Lawford wasn't just a friend to celebrities. He was their problem solver. If someone's career was about to be ruined by a scandal, they called him. In one case, when Ava Gardner overdosed at a party, Lawford kept it out of the news. Another time, Judy Garland was almost arrested for drunk driving, but Lawford convinced the police she was sick, not drunk. He always knew what to say and who to talk to. But his role as a secret keeper didn't stop with Hollywood. In 1960, he introduced John F. Kennedy to Marilyn Monroe at a party. Lawford planned everything, making sure no photographers were around. That meeting led to a dangerous affair that Lawford spent years trying to hide. Keeping all these secrets wasn't easy. Lawford created a system to make it safer. He used code words to talk about private matters, like calling affairs lunch dates and crimes business meetings. By the 1960s, people said he knew over 200 secrets that could destroy lives. Still, he stayed calm and never slipped up. One of the most mysterious parts of Lawford's life was his connection to Marilyn Monroe's death in 1962. He was one of the last people to talk to her. That night, he called to invite her to dinner, but she sounded strange and upset. She told him, "Say goodbye to the president and say goodbye to yourself because you're a nice guy." Lawford wanted to check on her, but others told him not to. After her death, rumors started that he cleaned up the scene to protect the Kennedy family. Some even said he destroyed her famous red diary, which might have had details about her relationships with John and Robert Kennedy. Lawford later said he regretted not going to her that night. "I should have gone," he admitted. "It's haunted me ever since." Lawford's life fell apart in his later years, but his loyalty never did. Even on his deathbed in 1984, when asked about the Kennedys, he smiled and said, "I'll take those to my grave." And that's exactly what he did. Perhaps most tragically, Lawford's refusal to divulge secrets cost him his relationship with his children. His son, Christopher Lawford, wrote in his memoir that his father became increasingly distant and paranoid as the years went on. Christopher recounted a heartbreaking conversation from 1983 when his father, drunk and despondent, told him, "I know things that would shock the world, but I'll never tell. It's my curse to bear alone." In 2018, Victoria Lawford, Peter Lawford's daughter, revealed secrets about the Rat Pack that shocked everyone. She said the group's fun, carefree image was fake, and that her father had told her about the dark truth behind their glamorous lives. The Rat Pack's famous performances in Las Vegas weren't just fueled by talent. They were powered by alcohol and drugs. Victoria shared one scary story from December 1963, when her father almost died backstage at the Sands Hotel after taking too many drugs. In a panic, Frank Sinatra called on mob connections to keep the story out of the press. According to Victoria, this was just one of many dangerous moments the group worked hard to hide. She also confirmed a rumor that had circulated for years. The Rat Pack, including her father, helped arrange meetings between powerful men and young actresses. These weren't innocent introductions. They exploited women who were desperate to make it in Hollywood. Victoria estimated that her father alone had set up at least 37 of these meetings between 1960 and 1965. It was something that deeply troubled him later in life. Peter Lawford's diaries added even more shocking details about that time. He wrote about wild Hollywood parties, where drugs like cocaine and amphetamines were handed out freely. At one party in 1965, held at his beach house, he estimated guests used over $50,000 worth of drugs in one night. He felt ashamed of his role in these events, once writing, "I've become a drug dealer to the stars. How did this happen?" Lawford also admitted he knew about at least 14 major scandals involving famous people. These secrets were so serious that they could have destroyed careers or even changed history. Keeping them secret caused him so much stress that by 1972, he was taking up to 30 Valium pills a day, just to cope with the fear of accidentally exposing them. One of the most troubling secrets involved a car accident at a party in 1966. Lawford said a well-known politician, whose name he never revealed, had been drinking and hit a young woman with his car. The woman was badly injured. To cover it up, Lawford helped bribe the police and arranged for her medical care and relocation to Europe. He later called this moment the beginning of the end for him, saying it ruined his relationship with the Kennedy family and made him question his own morals.